Hi, my name is Sam Goovaerts, and this is my Anthropology 274 final. My topic was on cats and human interaction, and I enjoyed it, and I hope you do too.
So the first thing we're going to look at just really briefly is the early domestication of cats and a little bit of history. Little is known about them just due to a lack of archaeological evidence. However, the first evidence that we saw was back in 4,000 years ago in the Neolithic era, and this was seen in Middle Kingdom Egyptian art, painted on scrolls, walls, etc. Another early domestication sign of early domestication of cats was in early civilizations and farming, where cats were used to kill pests, or cats kind of found their way to these farming villages, killed the pests. The humans, the farmers liked that, kept the cats around, started to feed them, started to care for them, and they had a symbiotic relationship from there. And that was one of the earliest forms. And things kind of developed from that point.
Alright, so in this first section, we're going to look at behavior of cats. And there's two studies we're going to look at. The first one is a study of exposure to different levels of human interaction. So a group of cats were selected and they were exposed to different levels of human interaction at 17 days of age. So the two levels were a lower level and an enhanced level. The lower level included just petting and being in the same room. The enhanced level included giving treats, holding, petting, playing, whatever. There really was no limits. And both lower handling and enhanced handling were in settings of 5 minutes. So the cats were exposed to 5 minutes of, or a group of cats were exposed to 5 minutes of the lower handling, and then a separate group were exposed to the enhanced handling group for 5 minutes as well. A year later, that same study goes and interviews the owners of the cats, and come and find, a year later, the owners revealed that those animals with the enhanced handling showed fewer signs of fear of humans, as well as overall higher level of affection. And the results for the lower level handling group showed results that would be expected. The cats, according to the owners, were less affectionate than they would consider to be a cat from the enhanced handling. Now, another study that was done similarly was done at the University of Cambridge, and this was on the topic of the initial cat-human interaction. So when a cat first sees a human, whether it be their owner, whether it be a stranger, that first initial reaction. And basically the way it worked is there was a group of cats in a room. There was two tests. The first test, both males, females, and kids went into the room with the cats. For the first 5 minutes, they were not allowed to interact with the cats. Then the second 5 minutes, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. Play with them, pet them, didn't matter. So whole 10-minute window, first 5 minutes, no interaction, second 5 minutes, whatever you want. Everything was reset, cats were let in again. Then same group came in, and this time they were allowed to interact right away for the whole 10 minutes. Lo and behold, the cat's reaction was much more positive for the second test, because that initial reaction kind of allowed cats to be more active and allowed them to investigate these strange humans. One little interesting tidbit about this test was that out of the participants, the females and the children were the most interactive both directions with cats and humans and cats, simply because the females and the children got down onto the ground with the cats and engaged on them on their level, which made the cats feel more comfortable, seeing the humans more approachable in that position, whereas the males sat on the chair and expected the cats to come to them. Alright, so this section is titled Curiosity Attracted the Cat. Obviously it's a play on words, like curiosity killed the cat, but basically this section is about how, and this is from my personal experience, my dad does not like animals. We exclusively have only had cats as pets, and he's never been a fan of them. But for whatever reason, the cat always goes to him, and it drives us crazy because the rest of our family, we love the cat, and it never hangs out with us. It always goes to my dad. And this kind of shows why that happens. And it's purely because of curiosity. Cats are very curious animals, as the saying goes. And basically, when they're showing this affection to this human that is ignoring them, in a sense, they're investigating the person and they're assessing the person's position on them as the cat. There's things like lack of eye contact, humans not petting the cat, not touching or shooing them away, just general like ignoring or pretty much just ignoring. And the cat doesn't know what to think of this because he's not used to that, living in a litter, or there's always interactions going on. And so cat, just being curious, investigates to understand the human and how they work.
So the next section we're going to talk about is communication. So as I previously stated, cats kind of see us as just large, weird cats. So there's many similarities in the communication that they do in a cat-to-cat interaction versus a human-to-cat interaction. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is physical communication, and that's through head rubbing, or they're bumping up on you around your legs. You'll be on the ground, they'll come up and rub their side up on your shoulder or something like that. This is a action that is often done by cats living in a colony, where they'll rub their heads or bodies together and exchange scents just to kind of get to know one another. And they're doing the same exact thing with us. Now, the second method is vocalization. So meowing and purring have kind of, well, purring more so, have kind of morphed into this idea that us humans, when we pet the cat, are making them feel good, and as a result, they're purring. I mean, although that might be true, the purring and meowing is more of just a method of getting our attention, or letting them know we're either doing something they like, they don't like, or they want us to do something. Now, this is where it kind of gets interesting, because meowing and purring is not really something that's used in cat-to-cat interaction, as far as meowing in a positive sense, or even negative, really. In a cat-to-cat interaction, it's more of, you'll hear cats fighting. It's like a screech, it's a howl, it's a really nasty sound. And they don't use that with humans. It's more of a meow that is toned down, and yes, there are negative meows. If you step on a cat's tail or do something they don't like, they might let you know. But it's not going to be that same interaction in the cat-to-cat versus the human-to-cat. Alright, so this next section we're going to look at emotions and how that relates to cat-human interaction through a test. And this test, basically, I'll try and explain it pretty simply here. The cat was placed in a room in their household so that they felt comfortable. And they were then subjected to 4 different tests. 2 tests were done by a stranger, and 2 tests were done by the owner of the animal, or the cat. Now, test 1 was the stranger, and they showed an angry face, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. That's the angry face. There's cameras in the room that recorded the cat's behavior. After 5 minutes, then the stranger was removed. Then the stranger came back in at a later date after the cat had forgotten about the test, and they went and did a happy face. Same thing, camera setup, recorded the actions. Then they reset, and this time they did the same exact thing except with the owner. Now, if we look at the results, it's somewhat inconclusive. However, we can kind of draw some things from it, that maybe it's like humans, reactions to certain situations are individual of the cat. In the top chart in session A, there was, so there's 2 sections, the familiar and unfamiliar, and you can see the angry is the light bar and the happy is the dark bar. You can see that with the familiar human, the cat was much, much more active with the happy face, and inversely for the angry face. Now, if you look at the bar down below, those results are pretty much switched, so the results are somewhat inconclusive. But what we can draw from it, like I said earlier, is that cats, much like humans, have their own personalities, and they react differently to situations, which I think is very interesting and can definitely be some sort of insight to the complexity of how cats work, similar to that to humans.
All right, in this last section, I want to talk about some human to cat relationships and basically the way we have a symbiotic relationship in some senses and how we live together. The first way is through ESAs, emotional support animals, and cats are one of the most common forms of emotional support animals. They provide comfort when we're suffering from effects of a mental disorder or social anxiety. Also, on top of that, they provide stress relief. And we discussed this, and we had an article in week 7 that kind of outlined how on college campuses that ESAs are much more used among students. An example was at college. One year there was 6 ESAs, and then the next year there was 20. So it's a growing industry, and there are downsides to it. Abuse of the privilege of how easy it is to get your animal certified as an ESA online for a small fee of $150. You can bring your pet to school. However, there is a very serious purpose for ESAs, and to some extent more service animals that are highly trained, like cancer sniffing dogs or seeing eye dogs, but that's on a whole nother level where they undergo rigorous training. These are just for social anxiety or stress or mental disorders, and we all deal with stress in college, and it can be challenging, and having an animal like a cat in your life can definitely help. And that's a really good relationship to observe between cats and humans. The second thing I want to touch on is in the documentary Keda we watched about cats in the streets of Istanbul and that bridge between tame and wild, and the relationship between the humans, and how I believe one of the ideas was that the cats are like mirrors of the personalities of humans and how they're related, and different stories intertwined with cats and their names. Like some of the names, I forget, Bangu, Denise, and Duman, yeah. They all have these different stories that then intertwine with the people around them, and that applies to the Western world because we take these animals into our family and treat them like children in a sense, and they're a huge part of our life, and we can't imagine life without them.